Thanks for coming. My name is Joe McDermott. I'm a director on our cloud security team here at CyberArk. Along with me is Michael Bycat, solutions architect, and really the star of the show here. So we have a lot to cover that we want to focus on today, but really what we're going to talk about is securing developers and applications within your cloud environment, right? So actually I need the clicker there, Mike. So we'll go through the agenda real quick here. We're going to touch on why the developers need to be secured, what the challenge is, and then what the solutions are. So let's dive right into it. One of the biggest things that we're faced is there's three main challenges that I think organizations are facing on a regular basis. Number one is new identities. So if you think about it, there's 45-to-1 is the ratio between machine identities and human identities within your environment. And that's going to continue to grow. 77% of developers, or of organizations that we've talked to in our customer base, have said that overprivileged developers are a huge concern for them. So we have to figure out how do we secure these new personas. These new personas are operating in new environments. So most customers have 3+ cloud environments, right? So they're probably mainly AWS, but they may have some of those other two as well. So it's a complex environment that they need to be able to scale and change and secure these identities, both AWS, other cloud providers, and the majority of customers are still on-premise as well. There's also new methods and new areas that we need to think about securing too. 93% of the customers that we surveyed said that they expect negative impact from AI tools, right? So AI is great, there's all this capabilities that come along with it, but how do you secure that application? So these are all things that we're focused on, and at the end of the day, credential theft is still the biggest concern. So at CyberArk, you guys may have known us historically as an on-premise solution focused on the IT persona, right? So you were brought in to meet cybersecurity requirements, cyber insurance requirements, and folks came in and they secured their domain admin, their server admins, their local admin, maybe some service accounts. And that's kind of been our bread and butter for the past 25 years. But what we've seen, and as our customers have grown, and as we've grown, and as environments have changed, is that privilege actually lives all across the spectrum, right? So there's privileged access that can be tied to your workforce, to your IT admins, to your developers, and to your machine identities. And so what we want to do with CyberArk, with our identity security platform, is make sure we're applying the right level of privilege controls to all these different personas so that the workflow and the access that they have is secured, but also frictionless and native for those users. We don't want to try to jam everybody through a vault and through a session manager because it might not be the right way to do it for those different personas. Specifically when we're talking about application development and developer access, if you kind of look at this, this life cycle here, there's privilege controls that are needed throughout. So we know that when we talk to customers, at the beginning, in dev, test stage, and prod, the developers going in there, they're building code, they're writing code, and they're building the application. As you evolve and you get towards production, it's less and less human access, but it's more and more machine access. So it's more done with code, whether it's Terraform or whether you're using Red Hat or Datadog along the way. So what we want to do is make sure that we're providing security for both of these spectrums, right? So for the human access, if they need zero standing privilege or just-in-time access into your environments, we can provide that. But for the applications, we're securing the credentials that they're leveraging on a regular basis. And that's either for your cloud-native secret stores, like your AWS Secrets Manager, or it could be for any of your CI/CD pipeline tools. So that's what we're going to touch on today. We're going to talk to you about how we secure all those identities across this build process. Hopefully it sparks some good conversation. And if you guys have questions, raise your hand. We'll try to answer them as we go here. If not, our booth is right over there. We'd be happy to chat with you. So I'll turn it to Mike to kind of dive in a little deeper.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. And thank you all for coming to listen to us at the end of the day. So let's start a little bit more on kind of the catch-up from a security perspective, and then I'm going to take you through a demo of what it looks like for the day in the life of a developer with a lot of risk involved, and then how we can address that without slowing them down. So first, as Joe was mentioning, the increase in identities and the move to the cloud has increased the cyber debt that we have within the organization. How can the cybersecurity teams, the CISOs, the Cloud Center of Excellence, catch up to these number of identities, close that gap, and make sure we're not slowing developers down? Maybe most importantly, it's not about not slowing them down, but moving at the same speed that they're working in. Let's allow them to do what they need to do and have the security baked in automatically so they don't even have to think about it. And the reason I'm here to talk to you around developers specifically, it could involve cloud engineers and cloud ops, IT ops as well, is because attackers are now specifically looking at developers as an attack method into the environment. If we look at an example, we've taken away the attack that took place here, but the idea is really the same. Fill in the blank with the different attacks in the vendor space that you've seen. So you're going to have some reconnaissance allowing the bad guy to find somebody who has kind of very basic read-only access into an environment. They use that to sniff around and find somebody who has higher level credentials. They could then have a more targeted attack, whether it be some sort of phishing or malware installation, to get on that machine and steal their credentials. At that point, the attacker has credentials directly into a production environment if standing permissions are granted to these developers. So we have to start looking at it from that perspective. What is it that a read-only account or even a high-level admin account in a production cloud environment going to expose from an attack surface perspective, and how can we secure it? So let me give you an example of a day-to-day for a developer, and I'm going to pause really quickly on one key point. And this is what I'm going to talk about in a moment around standing privileges. So you notice, and I actually want to forward one step further here as we expose everything. This is a developer who has standing access into an AWS organization, right? We see multiple AWS accounts in this org. We see dev, test, and prod. And so as they work and move laterally and push their code into production, they actually have themselves the ability to move laterally in the environment. And what does that mean? If an attacker gets these credentials, the attacker can now move laterally and get into the production environment, and that's a problem that we need to address. So let's keep on going and seeing how the developer's doing their day-to-day work. So they're going to take admin access into the dev account. They're going to go do some things with Lambda. I mean, we see they're moving very quickly over here, right? They're not wanting to slow down. They're troubleshooting some sort of function, some sort of database. So now they're going over to Postgres, and they're going to review RDS information here. And then they're going to attempt, or they are going to go ahead and connect into the database and do what they need to do. But again, we'll see them connecting using their database tool of choice with standing permissions. And you can just replace the attacker in this, and this means if these credentials are exposed, that the attacker has standing access to these databases, to these cloud environments, and can do all sorts of damage. Why is this a problem that hasn't been solved yet? Well, if you look at it from the top to bottom here, when it was on-premise systems, it was a little bit easier to define. Maybe it's because Windows and Linux has been around much, much longer in the concept of the administrative management layer, but you could very easily define a Windows admin needs this particular role to get their job done. A database admin needs this particular role to get their job done. But just like we saw in that example video, when we start talking about the cloud, all the users are the admins are the users. You kind of tell me what it is. It's all mixed together because they need to be able to go into these different instances. They're going into Lambda, they're going into S3. How do we easily define what it is they need and make sure you're not just giving them a star access to everything rule that's going to allow an attacker to have that. Now, many of you probably also have a hybrid environment, so some data centers. And so this is an example of how you have to figure out how to expand from that traditional mindset to a today evolving mindset of access to different environments. We notice up at the top is a more, let's call it traditional vaulted aspect for those on-premise systems. An admin named Robert needs to get to a database or to a Windows server, and we know there's built-in credentials for that, so that's going to be secured and managed and rotated. But when it starts coming to access to EC2 instances that are ephemeral and spin up very quickly for elastic load balancing reasons, that can happen now with federated access. We don't have time to vault those credentials. What about access to the AWS consoles or any of those other cloud consoles, or even to SaaS applications? We have a lot more to take into consideration there. The last bit I want to touch on before we see what our solution looks like to address these is just a little bit of terminology. So standing access means that in the target environment, there are always permissions defined for that access, right? So no matter when the user is accessing that target, the permissions are always there. Just in time, put some constraints around that. It means that during certain hours, the access is going to be allowed, but still on the target system, the permissions are always defined there. So if those credentials are stolen and logged into that system, they're there for the attacker to use. Zero standing privilege takes us to the top of the spear here, where there are no permissions defined on the target until the user needs it. The permissions are added on the fly. So it is a big difference when you go from just-in-time to just-in-time zero standing privilege. So now that I've given you that background, we have the ability to provide those different concepts and take you to the tip of the spear with zero standing privilege for your human access. Some of the key things you're going to see in the demo is exactly what our developer did previously, but they're going to do it with the zero standing privilege mindset. They're going to have access on demand to the multi-cloud environment. They're going to have it both to the management layer, but also to the resources, to the databases, to the Kubernetes clusters that are running in the cloud. Okay? And we want to make sure that we are empathetic to our users. And so we want to empower the success of both the users and the administrators, understanding that they need a single model to let them do their job and not slow them down. So you're not going to hear complaints from the developers when you tell them we need to use the security technology. We also need to increase efficiency for everybody involved. All right, let's get to the fun part here. And if I pause it in time, and I just missed it, right? It was quick, but what we saw on that previous screen is that the AWS management layer, there were no permissions available. So before we had dev, test, stage, and prod, or dev, test, and prod, and there was admin access all the time. Now when our developer went there, there was nothing there. So we are going to see them go ahead and go into the CyberArk SaaS solution. And we know that they need to do some work within Lambda to take a look at those functions. So they're going to request the access. They're going to elevate, and it's just at this moment that we've added the permissions to their dev account. You notice there's no test, there's no prod available for that user at that moment. Now they're able to go and take a look at the Lambda functions to see and make sure everything is functioning properly. And then go ahead and navigate to RDS to take a look at their database and make sure it's functioning properly. And tie it all together. Now we need access to a resource. So we're going to jump to our tool of choice, whatever the user wants to use to access a database or an EC2 instance. It's going to go through a SaaS gateway, but they're going to use their own federated identity instead of a standing credential to get zero standing privilege to that database. The credential is then going to be destroyed at the end of this session. We're going to have audit of everything that the developer did during this database session as well. Okay, so I took you through a lot there, but to recap, it's the idea of removing standing permissions to reduce the attack surface, but still allow the developers, the cloud ops engineers, the IT engineers who are in charge of moving things to the cloud or working natively in the cloud to do exactly what they need to do while you get the security benefits that you need to have within your organization. I'm going to pass back to Joe here to talk a little bit about the machine side of the house.
Awesome, thanks, Mike. So I think the big theme there that hopefully you guys took away from that is native frictionless access for your cloud admins and your developers, right? We want to make sure that they maintain that native access and that frictionless access so that they'll adopt the solution and you can extend privilege controls to these environments. Along those same lines, there's a lot of questions around, well, what do we do with secrets management and how do we start managing these secrets in a way that is conducive to the environment that you guys are working in, right? So CyberArk has so many capabilities around secrets management. We're going to focus on one today that's called CyberArk Secrets Hub, right? And one of the big challenges that we've seen is companies are using the native key stores that AWS offers, right? AWS Secrets Manager. But they don't always have visibility into how many of these exist in their environment. Are these secrets being rotated, right? So what we have is a way to help solve that, right? So these developers are using that. It's good that they're using the native tools, but you have vault sprawl and you lack visibility. So one of the first things that we can do with Secrets Hub, and there's a free trial that we can get you guys so you can test this out, is we can run a scan to give you visibility and discovery of all these secret stores, right? So you can go out and scan your AWS environment and say, hey, here's where the vaults exist within AWS. You can do it for other cloud providers too. That's usually the first step and the realization that, hey, there's a problem here. There's a lot of secrets that are out there that are unmanaged, that are stale. Yes, they're in a vault, which is great, but if they get outside that native vault, then we could potentially be putting ourselves in harm's way. So discovery and visibility is a big step. From there, the biggest thing is centralization and management, right? So if you're going out to all these native key stores and you're trying to make sure that these credentials are rotated and you're using Lambda functions and custom ways to do that, it gets very tough to manage. Now, if you go into a multi-cloud environment, it's even harder. So what Secrets Hub allows you to do is centralize that management. So for the developers and for the folks that have written code and application, they don't have to change anything. Their code is still going to run and retrieve the credential from the native key store. What we're going to do on the back end is synchronize those passwords and update them on a regular basis. So we'll integrate with your privileged cloud or your PAM self-hosted environment. We'll push out a new credential to all the different key stores and then rotate those credentials on a regular basis. And that can be set up by policy just like you would do with CyberArk. So if you want to have it change every single time, you can do so. If you want to change it every 30 days, you can do so. But now you're centrally managing it with CyberArk, with audit, and you're not changing the developer's workflow. The other big thing here is automation, right? Everybody that we talk to, it's automate everything. I want to do it once, and then I want to automate it, whether it's infrastructure as code or anything else. So we have built-in automation tools to increase your productivity here, and we have accelerators to help with deployment. So this is one thing that I think is really cool about CyberArk and our capabilities. We'll go out and write snippets of code for your custom environment and help you deploy these things faster, and we have teams that go out and do that. So if you think about it, there's 3 ways, going back to the cyber debt that we talked about at the beginning, 3 quick ways to reduce your cyber debt. Number 1, get centralized visibility across your AWS Secrets Management and any other cloud-native key stores. Number 2, synchronize those secrets with CyberArk without changing the developer workflow. And number 3, integrate those secret creations and onboarding using your existing automation tools. So there's a lot more we can do with secrets. This is one use case that I think is very relevant. We've had a number of conversations at our booth already today about this. So if this is a challenge you guys are faced with, we can show you a demo at the booth. We can talk to some subject matter experts on it and dive into it a little bit more. So from a presentation standpoint, that was all we had. We do have a couple of minutes left, so if there's any questions, happy to answer them now.